Well, welcome back. As we promised, live in studio, Dr. Joseph Cheboiwo, Director, Joshua Cheboiwo, thank you, Director for Kenya Forest Research Institute. Welcome to the program, and thanks for the correction.
Thank you, thank you. Yeah.
Now, a lot has been said about climate change. Sometimes we tend to be too scientific, sometimes we are too technical when we are talking about this subject. What is climate change in simple terms?
Thank you. As you have said, climate change is a complex matter. It's not as easy as you might think, because it involves long-term monitoring of parameters which are of weather in nature. So, do you know weather changes on a daily basis? They change on a weekly basis, they change on a monthly basis, they change on a yearly basis. But it's predictable. When you look at around the year, you know March there is rainfall, and the temperatures are expected to be this. So every year, March, we find over very many years, there are changes. Initially, they give 30 years period for any body to say that climate change has happened. Annual, 2 year, 3 year is not yet attained that particular significance for us to say it is permanency, and there is permanency in terms of that change. So a 30-year period is usually used to indicate or to measure and indicate that climate change has taken place.
Okay.
And the key parameter which globally is now accepted is the temperature.
Okay.
And temperature has a lot of influence to very many other weather patterns.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and even some of those parameters you're talking about, we see cyclones, for example, in the global north. In the Far East, we are seeing tsunamis. In the Kenyan context, what is the proof that we are experiencing climate change?
We have to look at our parameters at global level. There has been, for the last almost many years, temperatures in this global scene has been increasing over time. So even our temperatures here, if we take long-term 100-year trend, we shall be seeing that they have moved higher by certain degrees centigrade. That's the time now we can say that climate change is taking place even in this country. So the best parameter for us really to evaluate is looking at the temperature pattern for the last 100 years. Then we see how is it behaving. Is it's expected to be usually repetitive or remains constant over the years.
Okay.
But if you see it having a gradual increase, then we say that one has really increased.
Okay.
And it will influence a lot of factors of climate aspect of it.
Okay, there's a story, one of my colleagues, Zainab Said, she talked about 2.5 million Kenyans being in dire need of humanitarian support, and that in fact 11 counties have been placed under the red alert due to persistent drought. Is drought a parameter? Does it fit within that puzzle that you're talking about?
Drought is caused by failure of rainfall to come at the right time, at the right season of that particular place, what we are talking about. And this is, rainfalls are caused by wind direction and water masses. So if the Indian Ocean is warm, and the water or wind can pass through there and then collect moisture, and they pass through the normal areas, and then they are able to deposit rainfall. So if this wind changes, if the ocean movements due to either increased temperature or other global patterns change, then it means that water is not being moved to the right places, and then rainfall is received.
Okay.
Then that one will now affect rainfall availability in that particular area. The dry areas of Kenya, like Wajir, they have not had rainfall for the last almost 2 years. So this is really related to the global water masses, which is supposed to really influence the wind patterns which move through these particular seasons, these areas. And then if they don't carry sufficient moisture, then there will be no rainfall.
There will be no rainfall.
Yeah, so we can trace all this to the global weather patterns, which is changing.
Okay.
Which also it affects Kenya, affecting other countries.
Yeah. And there's also a link between rainfall and forests.
Definitely. If you look at Sahara Desert, there are very big trees if you manage to go through the sand. It means those places had forests many years ago until there was change in the wind direction, and then water mass being brought from the oceans failed to go there.
Okay.
Then there was no rainfall. Okay. Then it really becomes a desert. Okay. So there cannot be rainfall, there cannot be forests where there are no rain.
Okay.
Rain is one of the principal components of forests.
Okay, exactly. And if you look at this data showing that Kenyan forests are being degraded, and I want to know, you're a director at KEFRI. I'm interested in knowing what policy action is being put in place to mitigate. And as you respond to that, you can also tell us what role KEFRI plays in terms of mitigating climate change.
Forests, usually stable forests, are supposed to have a certain physical features. The mature forest, the young samplings. So when we call a complete forest, it should have all the trees, the medium trees, and the young trees. That one is now a complete forest. But when there is degradation, very many factors come in. If there are grazing, if there are people who are cutting a lot of trees, which are more valuable, so you find that forest is no more having sufficient distribution of the edges of that forest. Then in that particular case, the forest is not a normal forest. Then it's already a degraded forest. This particular forest can change into grasslands because the valuable trees are being removed, or the samplings which are supposed to replace the bigger trees are being eaten or browsed by livestock. So you find an even forest which is almost opening up into grazing land. And if that is not prevented, it will become an open grassland, and there will be no more forest. So because they cannot succeed each other, and then the older forests, when they die, there is no younger ones coming up. So this is what's called forest degradation. And in forest degradation, the only way of reversing this or restoring the original forest is removing the drivers. So if it is being caused by livestock browsing, if it's being caused by population collecting firewood and poles and other materials from that forest, we have to restrict that particular exploitation. And then if that forest is already don't have enough seeds, then we have to reforest it by planting or other measures which can be brought in to restore it to its original status.
Its original status. I remember Kenya committing to restore 5.1 million hectares of degraded land. That was after the Paris Agreement.
Yes.
Where are we with that?
Kenya, as part of the Pond Challenge, we committed to really restore 5.1 million hectares of degraded lands. It's not only forest. You can also find degraded farmlands, dry lands, and our government forests. So all this combined, we committed to really rehabilitate as part of African 100 million hectare challenge, and as part of commitment to Pond Challenge, as part of the climate change contribution. So in this particular aspect, there are now efforts being made in classifying these forests and then knowing what actions are taking place, and then under the 10% tree cover strategy, in which we want to plant 2 billion trees as a country, moving towards 10% forest cover, which is our long-term target, which we wanted to achieve by 2030. And these are actions, and KEFRI here usually brings in the technology. We know how to assess this forest. What do we need to do to it? If there is no more seed banks or seed stocks, then we say there is the second intervention is to clock out, protect it, and if there are trees which are still remaining, it can be able to regenerate itself. But if there is no more enough trees to produce the seeds which can fall into the ground and then regenerate, then we say we can now have human intervention by planting. So this is what we have done under 10% tree cover strategy. We have identified these areas in public land, in farmlands, and then it's also community land. And now what actions are required to be done by all players, private sector, county governments, individuals, public agencies, to really restore their area which they are contributing, or if they have been identified and they are supposed to do it as part of contribution to this 10% tree cover strategy.
Okay. In terms of the outcomes, what happened in the COP26 in Glasgow? What in terms of those outcomes, from that summit. What would you say? What does it mean for us as a country?
As we have said, climate change is a global issue. In fact, if you see the drivers of climate change are mostly developing countries. If you see the contribution of warming up is greenhouse gases. And these greenhouse gases, the major victim is produced by coal. Coal burning to generate energy, mostly in developed countries. A lot of transport, factories who are being run by these energy sources are contributing to creating these greenhouse gases, which now shield and then generate higher temperatures. So the world since 1970s have identified that the warming of global is a big problem to humanity going to the future. It will affect a lot of processes, agriculture, rainfall patterns, and it will cause many other health conditions and so on. So we have really, as a global community, we have decided to intervene. What are the interventions? Interventions are in two ways: mitigation and adaptation. We as a country, we are not contributing much to climate change in terms of generating carbon dioxide, because as I say, 72% is coming from coal. Our energy sources is hydro, geothermal, solar, and now wind. So apart from the communities who are burning charcoal, and then their firewood, those are small who will contribute. But in terms of significance of Iraqi, we are very far, because most of it is done through coal and other energy sources, which are really polluting. So these are the countries now we are telling. We have been contributing for very many years, and it has been attributed to countries, US, China, Britain, and other countries. India. Yes. These are countries now whose contribution to greenhouse gases has been identified and then documented. These are the countries we are saying, in the area of producing these gases, you have to really minimize, to reduce your production, to ensure that we minimize our temperature not exceeding 1.5 degrees by 2030 and beyond. So, but Kenya, when we are going to COP, we are people who are suffering. You have found these droughts, we have found flooding. All of these are attributed to climate change, and they are affecting us, and we have not contributed much. So what we are saying is, we as a country, we have already developed what's called NDC. This is National Determined Contribution of Kenya towards amelioration of climate change. And we, in the mitigation aspect of it, we are saying we shall continue with our energy sources, which I have just mentioned. We are going to increase our tree cover to 10% so that we can absorb more of these gases. Because when you are dealing with climate change, there are two ways of doing it. You reduce producing the gaseous aspect of it, or you bring in other adaptation in which mitigation measures in which you try to remove these particular gases from the atmosphere through mostly afforestation. So the environment aspect of it comes in because we do what's called sequestering, because the plants take on carbon dioxide and produce oxygen, which is a good air for us.
In fact, there is a conference that's coming up tomorrow. Would you like to talk about it? What should we expect?
There is a conference which is called Commercial Forest Conference and Expo, the first national commercial conference and expo, which is being organized by the country, being coordinated and led by KEFRI. This in one of our adaptation, about the 13 adaptation actions by which the country has brought into NDC, is planting or putting 140 hectares in commercial forestry. So how do we go about it? So this is the first conference in which we are saying we are bringing in all the players in this country who are dealing with tree growing for purposes of commerce or purposes of business. It can be tree growers, and then industry who buy these trees, traders who depend on forest products in their value chain, from the wholesaler, transporters to retailers, and then those people who consume. If you are biomass energy like the tea sector, if you are industries which use firewood, and many other, if you are timber treatment plants which treat these transmission poles, all these we are bringing together so that we can really discuss where we are, what experiences do we have, what challenges are we having, what opportunities are we having, so that we can have baseline scenario. We can move this country now to grow commercial forest or growing of trees as a business.
So as we conclude, expectations?
We expect from this a lot of information from our experiences as a country, because now moving forward we are trying to make tree growing as a business. So from there, those who are growing trees, they will know who can buy their trees, what type of trees how should they grow their trees to beat which market niche. And then investors who want to put in processing plants, they will know how much growers are there in the country. Do they have enough material for them to sustain their industry, and so on.
Yes. That's a good place to leave it. All that just to ensure that we check climate change.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Joshua Cheboiwo, for coming into the studio.
Thank you very much.
Well, we take a short break. When we come back, we're going to look at the day's business, and later on we have the day's sports. Stay with us.